Welcome to the Innovation Ecosystem podcast. We interview remarkable and thought-provoking guests about innovation, leadership, and change in the world of business. Whether you're an executive or an entrepreneur, our objective is to help you and your organisation create an entrepreneurial culture, become more innovative, and better able to respond to change. Each week, we'll deconstruct world-class performance from the arenas of business, academia, science, and sports. Each week, you can expect key insights, fresh perspectives, and proven tools you can use straight away to make you more successful professionally and personally. With your host, Mark Bidwell.
Hi, this is Mark Bidwell of the Innovation Ecosystem. My guest today is Céline Schillinger, who is Head of Quality, Innovation and Engagement at one of the top five pharma companies in the world, Sanofi Pasteur, based in Paris, although she's located in Boston. She's one of a number of this elite group of women, 40 over 40, who are actively disrupting, innovating, and making an impact. And from this talk, it will become very, very clear the kind of work that she's doing. I found particularly of interest, and this is what I would suggest you listen out for, because this is what we're going to learn, this is what we discuss in the interview, the way that she uses technologies and approaches from the Occupy movement and from the Arab Spring to transform the quality function in a large global pharmaceutical company, which has a positive impact on its customers, on its employees, and on their families. And this is a really profound and very, very exhilarating story she tells. Secondly, what does change in the 21st century look like? She talked about her journey from being branded by senior management as a troublemaker through to her being awarded Businesswoman of the Year in France. And how did she take responsibility for managing that career path, if you like, from one extreme to another? And then thirdly, I found it fascinating, and this is something that I speak to a lot of people about in my day-to-day activities. How do you actually go about influencing people and helping them change their mind and helping them see the world through your eyes? So she really gets into what the approach is that she used for, working with the top of this very large pharmaceutical company. What was her mindset? What was her approach? So plenty in here. I think you'll enjoy this talk as much as I did. Before we get started, I'd like just to remind you, for those of you who haven't, to join the thousands of other business leaders from around the world to access our exclusive resources that are proven to transform businesses to help make you and your organizations more innovative, more entrepreneurial. So hop on over to innovationecosystem.com, that's all one word, for more details. And now let's get into the interview with Céline Schillinger. Hello, this is Mark Bidwell from the Innovation Ecosystem. With me today I have Céline Schillinger, who is Head of Quality, Innovation and Engagement at Sanofi Pasteur, and who's also one of an exclusive group of 40 over 40 nominees. So these are women who are innovative, disruptive, and making an impact in the world. So welcome to the show, Celine.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me here. So,
Celine, you're based in Boston. Let me ask you the opening question. How do you answer the dinner party question, what do you do?
That's a great question. My mom asked me this question regularly, and I say, I do corporate activism. And then I stop for a few seconds and people try to compute what corporate activism is. And then I explain what I do is leveraging the tools and techniques of social movements for business performance. And that is generally the beginning of a very interesting conversation.
Okay. And is that your interpretation of your role? Or if you sent me your job description, would it say that's at the heart of it?
So my job description is a bit more complete than that. You know what job descriptions in big pharma may look like. But this is the summary. It means the same. What I just said in 15 words expresses the same thing as a 2-page document.
Okay.
But corporate activism is really something I sort of came up with. It's not the definition of corporate activism. If you look at it on Google, corporate activism is often considered as something in relation to stock owners, challenging corporations for governance or what their business. But what I use this wording to express the fact that we are really taking inspiration from social movements like the Arab Spring, like the Occupy movement, but apply it to a performance objective in the workplace or with customers or external stakeholders.
Okay, and let's come back to that in a minute. But I mean, it's social movements, but I guess the social media piece is part of that as well, or not necessarily?
Absolutely, because it's a very big enabler of those social movements. Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. And then, so I want to get into actually what does that look like. But I mean, the other thing that struck me in researching for this conversation is you've been, you were described by your bosses, I guess, as a troublemaker, but then you went on to be named Businesswoman of the Year in France in 2014. So maybe just talk us through that journey so what did you do that got you to be described as a troublemaker, and then what did you do that got you to reinvent yourself, or for them to change their mind, I guess?
Right. So I don't know if everybody's changed their mind.
Okay.
But I also learned, and I've evolved, which is a good thing. But I think I'm still considered as a disruptor, and that goes with, lots of successes, but also it creates some tensions somewhere. I mean, that's the rule of the game, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And that what makes me part of this great pool of women that have been recognized as being the top 40 innovators and disruptors this year. So it started by a frustration. It started by realizing that I did not evolve anymore in my work, in my company, in my organization. And it had been 10 years already. And I felt I still had a lot of competencies and skills to bring, but the way the system worked didn't really value the diversity of competencies that different people can bring. It was really focusing on a very narrow bandwidth of talents and promoting always the same kind of people, thinking the same, coming from the same background, etc. And I felt not only it was bad for me and for people like me, but it was bad for the organization too. And we could increase our chances to connect with the diversity of the external world if we were more diverse internally. And this is
just to be clear, this is diversity of perspective as well as gender and race.
Absolutely. Yeah. Perspectives, background, social class, whatever, origin, and so forth. But of course, there's a big group that is often kind of forgotten, which is not a minority, which is the women's group. We are about 50% of the workforce, at least in the organization where I am.
Really, that's a huge number for the pharma industry, isn't it?
It is 50% of total workforce and 50% of managers. But then when you climb the ladder, the proportion of women gets really, really small. Yeah,
I looked at your board actually, and of Sanofi, the holding company, and I wasn't struck by diversity. Put it that way.
Yeah, and you know what? That's really interesting because the French law, Sanofi is headquartered in France, and the French law requires 40% of either gender in the boards. That's a requirement by the law. So companies abide by that, but the law doesn't say anything about executive committees. Yeah, and executive committees are really what reflects the so-called meritocracy of each organization. And that is where the situation is generally very, very bad. I think if you can find like 20% of women in big pharma in executive committees, that would be a max,
Yeah. So you felt you'd plateaued. I mean, to use Whitney Johnson, and Whitney introduced you to me, which is why you're on the show. And Whitney was, she wrote this wonderful book, Disrupt Yourself. But to use her language, you kind of plateaued on your career curve, if you like.
Yeah, exactly. And I found it terrifying because I was only 40 years old, and I saw a lot of people around me in this organization or other organizations that had plateaued and that had lost hope and that had become either very bitter or that had turned away to other centers of interest, like, personal stuff, getting involved in their local communities at home and so on. And that's great. But what if we channel a little bit of that energy into what we're trying to do as an organization? There's a lot of waste. I found a lot of waste. We're wasting people. We're wasting resources. People that have been trained, that are loyal to the company, and we could do better. Yeah. So that was my frustration, and that was bigger than myself. So I said, okay, I said to myself, okay, what do I have to do? Let's do something, even if it's a very little drop of water on the fire. It will still be my part, my share. So I sent a letter to the CEO. That was in 2010.
A letter or an email?
I sent an email.
Okay. No, I'm just wondering because a letter would have been even more sort of powerful because it shows that people are still writing letters in 2010 in the corporate world.
That's true, but that shows the power of the digital. Because my letter was an email. Yeah. I was able to send it to a few friends after I sent it to the CEO, and those friends were able to send it to other friends, etc. And that letter, that message became viral. Thanks to digital.
Yeah, lovely.
That was the beginning of everything.
Okay. And so Businesswoman of the Year in France in 2014?
Yes, exactly. 2013, if I'm not mistaken. And that came from this movement that started and that grew, and it was a super interesting moment in the very beginning where we sat down, a few friends and I, and we said, okay, there's obviously a lot of people interested in this topic because we've got so many answers and enthusiasm, and obviously we've touched on something that was really underlying here but not said. So what do? We have two possible paths. Either we form a protest group and we, just protest and say, it's bad, what you're doing is bad and you got to change. Or
and this is within the company, is it?
Yes. Yeah, okay, yes, okay. Absolutely. And so either we become kind of like the French unions a little bit, or we become a constructive group and we build something for the sake of the company and the people, and we address a blind spot of the company because maybe they're not bad people. Maybe they're just haven't thought about that and they don't know, but we know what could be done. So maybe we can help. And I think taking this direction was really for me an eye-opener about the power of bringing people together around a shared purpose and how you can co-design, co-build a lot of value together.
And I mean, it's lovely. There's two words in there which I wanted to sort of unpack. Firstly, bringing people together around the purpose. Then secondly, the kind of the co-building, the kind of co-creation. But I mean, what is the purpose of the company? Did you have to create that, or was that something that was already out there?
So we knew what we were doing, and the company is making vaccines, and that's fantastic. And we're all very enthusiastic about public health. But if we do vaccines with just a fraction of the available talents, and it's not inclusive, and people who have a lot of very interesting skills cannot bring them to the table, and they're ignored, that goes against the purpose of the company. So our purpose was to make the company better, and a better place to work, better for everyone, better for even people who did not conform to the narrow stereotype of a leader. And that was our purpose. Getting together, becoming an inclusive, successfully rich company, a 21st century company. That's what we wanted. And that purpose was so strong that it attracted people from all over the place, from various functions, countries, companies within the group, women and men. From the very beginning, we understood that if we were to become a women's group, we would face a dead-end road. We had to be, if we were fighting for inclusion, we had to be inclusive too, right? We have to model the behaviors that we want others to adopt. So we joined forces with everybody who shared this purpose, how to make this company a better place for everyone. And this got us a lot of awareness, and we got the attention of the top management, and that was great. We crowdsourced a series of proposals, 63 proposals that we brought to the top leadership, and they made some of those proposals were turned into actions and so on. So to me, it was a real starting point where I realized what we can bring as a collective of people, unprompted, not having to respond to an injunction. And we had to invent, the way we worked. We had no boss. We had no official channel to communicate. We had no money. We had no marketing power. So we had to be super astute. We had to create and creative. And our richness and the diversity of talents got us to develop, to invent new ways of talking and speaking to us and one another and creating value together. That was really awesome.
So I mean, one of the big themes there, I think, just to call it out, is, I mean, the power of constraints. I mean, often, in large organizations, particularly rich pharmaceutical companies, resources are not a problem if a company chooses to go after it. But you were in a very different situation where you actually had to take full advantage of the very scarce resources that you had.
True. And I would tell you, we were even so motivated by that. We really wanted to make an impact that some of the stuff we did, like printing postcards and so on, we did it with our own money. Personally. Yeah. This never happens, but we did it. We had no fear. We had no barrier.
Powerful. And just talk me through. So, you were, the beginning of the story was you were plateaued, you were frustrated, you were, scared that at that age you couldn't see any potential. Let's go forward to when you took how many, do you say 62 proposals into the executive team?
Yeah, 63 proposals.
63.
So
was this a formal presentation with
yes.
slides? So here's the question. If I'd have been watching you, if I'd have been sitting in that room as you came in the door, what would I have seen you doing? What would I have heard you saying? Because it must have been quite an important presentation for you, I guess.
Yes, it was. So I dressed up very elegantly.
I'm sure.
And I came with a friend of mine, the co-leader of the movement. So we were the two lead activists, I would say. We were actually invited by the CEO to host a whole workshop, half a day, with the whole executive committee, the whole executive team. So that was a big proof of confidence and trust. And we acknowledge it this way. And we had a presentation of the movement, where it came from, and we made it not frightening for those people because we really needed their help and their support. It was not, as I said, not something that was done against them. It was something that was done to help them, and we needed them to help us too. So we ended up with a debate on the top proposals, and they voted, and some actions were implemented, some were not. The end of all that was, for me, a little bit frustrating because, not the end, but the result, I would say, because I had dreamt of a total revolution, of a total change and people understanding, what was at stake, and the whole company changing its operation modes. And it never happens this way in big organizations. Change is much more, it's slower. It goes step by step. It goes like a tango, 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. And that's also important to understand and work with that, because we have these ideas of progress and change. But if we give up after the first step back, we won't reach our goal. So we have to adapt, understand, become very, very resilient, and keep our focus on our purpose and keep moving. Yeah. So what happened after that was that some people said to me, this movement has been very successful. Well, not successful enough in my views, but that's what I heard. People have said it was very successful, but it was because of the topic, because it was about something that is politically correct to support, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't think it's the topic. I think it's the way we did. I think it's about all this mobilization, engagement, purpose, co-creation, social media. And I said, if you want a proof, and I think we can do something for the business using the same approach, that would work enormously, and that would bring a lot of value. So please let me try that. So I advocated and built a business case and engaged a lot of people to, get their input and build a project. And I finally got heard and got a position that I created which was a position I had before this one today, which was called stakeholder engagement. Okay. And that position was hosted by the marketing department in Pasteur that was getting ready for the launch of a new product, a new vaccine.
Okay. And so this is different from the quality role that you're in now, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, it was just the one before I have now.
Okay. So I mean, and presumably, what you did? Am I right in saying you applied the same the same mindset, the same approach, as you say, mobilization, purpose, co-creation? Yes. Anything that you did differently, Celine, that you'd learned, from the first time round that perhaps wasn't quite as effective, or were you lucky enough to sort of, to nail each of those tactics straight away, if you like?
Oh, it's the same. I haven't been successful at everything, unfortunately, again. But what I did was from the very beginning, go find external partners who would share the same purpose as us, as our organization. And that was a way, an interesting way, I thought, to decenter a little bit the organization from its own constraints and fears and resistance. Because when you're trying to change an organization, there's a lot of counter resistance mechanisms. Mm-hmm. The antibodies get very, very strong. But when you are allied with other partners, well, then the organization has to compromise a little bit. And so control is they have to question a little bit their own procedures, because other partners have their own procedures too. So that's a way to, when you have several bosses, you have less control. There's less control over you,
And so you were leveraging the ecosystem essentially. You were going
exactly.
And what criteria? I mean, were you clear what kind of organizations you wanted? I mean, clearly you wanted them to be influential back to the Home Office, right?
Yeah, well, I wanted a diversity, going back to the diversity mindset, a diversity of organizations. So not other pharma companies, but what was the most important criteria was we needed organizations that shared this purpose. We were doing something to fight against a disease, and we needed to find partners who shared the same purpose, even if were not evolving the same space as we were.
Mm-hmm. And this was dengue fever, was it?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Dengue is a disease carried by mosquito, and for 20 years the company had been developing a vaccine. There is no other vaccine in the world against this disease. So there were huge public health stakes and business stakes, and we had to do something that was a little bit different, because it was such an opportunity. We had to leverage the engagement, the energy that was available in the ecosystem that was untapped. The energy to fight against the disease. If you just raise awareness against a disease, okay, you raise awareness, but it doesn't mean that people will move into action. And that's where a lot of pharma companies stop. They just raise awareness. They have the month of whatever disease, or the day of the World Day of whatever disease, and it stops here. It's cool, it's fun, but it's not a game changer at all. While if you tap into the willingness to be involved and contribute, the activist mindset, well, then you have people that are already in motion, and you're a partner. You're an activist too. You're not sending messages out to them. You're also acting. And that's what I wanted us to do.
Lovely. And the results were pretty staggering, I think, weren't they, in terms of the metrics?
Yes, it was really unbelievable. I really had not planned for that at all. The first week, so the whole thing was ended up being a digital platform supported by a variety of partners, and including an NGO. And that platform was connected to a lot of different social streams: Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, etc. It's called Break Dengue. Mm-hmm. And the first week of opening the Twitter page, we got 10,000 followers. And in 9 months, we got up to 250,000.
Wow.
And that is just unbelievable. But it's not a surprise in a way, because people are tired of corporate speak. People don't want to be talked to. People don't want more information. They want action, and they want to be involved in the action. And they want something that is unbranded, that does not reflect the self-interest of one organization. People are not stupid, if you're interested in, I don't know, a cause, or you're not going to go to a branded website. If it's supported by one partner only, you know that they're trying to sell you stuff. But if it's a community of very different partners and there's no product involved here, well, then that's a different thing. That's a different story.
But as you said earlier, I mean, this was nonetheless working on behalf in the marketing organization. I mean, were you under pressure to say, "Come on, put some branding on. Let's see if we can convert some of this into"?
I have been in a way, but I've resisted, and I've been successful. So people here also, in organization, people understand if you come with a compelling business case and reason and explanations, it can take ages. Right, and that can be frustrated, but never stop building trust internally. And it's easy for me to say that because sometimes I haven't done that. Sometimes I was right, sometimes I was wrong. But really, you can't do things like that on your own. You need partners, you need help and support. So I've explained, and people understood. So that's how it happened, and it got rewarded for best use of social media for healthcare, most impactful emerging initiative in a pharma area. So that shows something, and it got a lot of interest from big stakeholders in the dengue field. And to me, this is really promising, and more organizations could do the same. But of course, it takes guts and courage from an organization, because here you accept to release, to give away control. And this is probably the hardest thing for an organization: release control over the message, right?
Yep.
Instead, support free conversations. Oh my God.
But I think you're doing yourself. I mean, you're being sufficiently modest, because I mean, it takes guts from the individuals to actually align themselves with it and go the extra mile in the first place. But then the organisation clearly has to follow through as well. Yeah.
Well, when you're driven, when you have this very, very, deep in your guts, and I think, I don't know, I got this from my first experience as an activist, and the more I listened to social media about the dengue ecosystem, the more I knew this was the right thing to do, and I was not alone, fortunately. So that's how we managed to push this through.
And then Celine, so now you're in the quality area, and you're using the same technologies or same approaches to fundamentally change how quality is done in the vaccines business. Is that right?
That's right, and it's exactly the same story. So, about 2 years ago, I was explaining this this dengue story, in an internal conference that was attended by the new chief quality officer. He had just joined the company a month before.
From within the industry, or
from within the industry, but a different company. And so he had this external look and external views on how we did things in the company, and he felt that we were responsible for our own problems, quality problems, because we were working as a typical pharma organization, I would say. Lots of rules, lots of regulations, very constrained and very heavy, and lots of bureaucratic processes. And of course, lots of that is needed, is necessary, because we're manufacturing vaccines. Okay, that's extremely. We inject vaccines in healthy people, so we have to be absolutely reliable in safety and quality.
And just for the listeners who don't know, I mean, to make it really clear, if anything goes wrong here, the plant gets shut down, and the source of revenues for that business unit or that manufacturing facility just get dried up until it's reapproved for open, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's a huge deal.
And it's not a theoretical threat. It happens. And you can have companies like just losing business entirely because of that. So it's really, really huge.
And so it's not an environment in which co-creation and some of this other language. So I'm curious, how does that work? Because it is, I think you said earlier on, this is let's just remind for the listeners, this is, quality is normally the police force in the industry, right?
Yes, totally.
It's a mature conservative industry. And the other thing I think, Celine, sorry for interrupting, is that you would be inheriting problems or decisions that were maybe made several years back, which hadn't come to surface, right? So that's the other thing that's quite important here for people to understand.
Totally. And we are not we're not in a new economy company or this kind of things. We have factories. We have factory workers, and many of them. We have temp workers. We have our factories have like 2,000, 3,000 people working on the shop floor, people working at night. So how do you engage those people? Those people often don't even have a computer because they're working with machines and that kind of things. So, but the starting point of all that was the fact that this chief quality officer thought, by listening to what had happened on the dengue story, well, maybe if we did the same thing internally, that would work. Instead of pushing messages to people, telling them how to work, what to do, what procedure, what systems, what if instead we reversed the flow and we pooled people as activists of a cause, activists of doing good things, of improvement, of being the best, of serving people who need vaccines, right? And that changed the whole thing. It's just phenomenal. We've started a social movement. So I was thrilled to hear that. And I was thinking, wow, this is a fantastic opportunity to impact change internally, impact the culture internally and the way people work. And that's totally awesome, not just for the company, but for the people. I've seen too many people being unhappy at work. And I think when you're unhappy at work, you're often unhappy at home too. And that has a lot of consequences on society as a whole. So I got there and we started a social movement in the workplace. So we started by co-creating our purpose, gathering people from different parts of the organization to think, so what is it we want to do? What is it we want to fight for? And because it's a fight, it's not like a lukewarm corporate statement. We have to have something strong that talks to our head and heart and guts. And that's often a bit scary for corporate communicators, but that's the way things work. People don't want to hear more corporate lukewarm statements. And this
isn't a generational thing, I guess, is it?
No, at all. There you have people who've been here for 25 years and who say, finally, this is what I've been waiting for. And on the contrary, you have young people who don't know if they should do that, and so it's really interesting. Sometimes the people who get in the movement are not those who you would expect to see.
Yeah. So, so what happened? So here you are. Again, a very metrics-driven part of the organization, I guess. How did you co-create? A culture or processes or a program that actually that moved the needle on those metrics?
So we worked with, we decided to get helped by a professional organization. We went to Qatar International, founded by John Qatar.
Yep.
So I've been extremely lucky to work with him and his team for a year and a half. And we went to explain and tell site leadership teams internationally, because we decided from the beginning to go global. We have factories in North America, in France, in India, and smaller factories in other countries. And we decided to go explain to the top leadership what it was about, that they would see volunteers come up and networks get together without the leaders asking this to happen, and that they shouldn't be surprised, they shouldn't be frightened, they should support that, because that's what we wanted. We wanted to create a dual organization where you have, at the same time, the hierarchical pyramid, the functions, the layers, etc., that does what it does well, that is management, organizing complicated things. But at the same time, we wanted a network, people getting together around common interests, around their passion, sometimes for a short amount of time, unprompted, and building value together. And it's not like creating a sandbox, beside the organization, because generally when the ideas come back from the sandbox, they're shot immediately by the antibodies of the organization. No, it was really to have a symbiosis between the pyramid and the network. So people being both in the pyramid, doing their job, and volunteers. So the way we did that was, as I said, we first created a purpose, co-created a purpose with people from various ranks and functions. Then we toured the sites to explain a little bit what would come and to talk about this purpose with first groups of people. And then we let the energy grow around this. Volunteers went to their colleagues and talked about the purpose and what we needed, how this change could be an opportunity, how to work together differently and better. And the energy rose around this cause. And after a few months, we got enough people convinced and willing to go. And then that was a time when we decided to channel the energy into action. So you see, we didn't start by an action plan or by a goal, as most change initiatives do. We started by raising the energy. It's only when you have the energy, the people willing to fight together for something, that you say, okay, now what could we do?
Yeah. And how do you measure energy? I mean, how did you measure energy? Was it visceral in your guts, or was it? Did you use some kind of metrics?
We had some metrics. We didn't impose anything or suggested anything, but volunteers on the sites quickly realized that in order to have more, I would say, power, they needed to show numbers. They needed to show how many people on the site were in. So they decided to count people, and to count people who were willing to support the opportunity, the cause. And so they found different ways. Again, we didn't prompt anything, but they found it. They found the ways to becoming more engaging, to attract more people. They created events. They created mailing lists to ask people to join, and so on. So it was really a very interesting moment of leadership development. People finding on their own that they have to become better communicators, and that they have to be better organized. It was weird for the first movers, because they had no boss, they had no instructions, they were not working in the same team and the same department, and that is a fantastic opportunity to develop leadership skills at every level of the organization.
I mean, it's almost, as you described this, Celine, it's almost like the exact opposite of a traditional corporate change program. I mean, you talk about a cause, you talk about, focusing on the purpose, you talk about, people actually stepping up and doing the work, on their own. I mean, it's exactly the opposite of a. I mean, I'm interested about how the Cotter guys were able to. I mean, had they seen this kind of thing before? The Cotter International, they had, they?
They had, and they told us that this would happen, and we didn't believe them. But what was interesting was also the reaction of some leaders who were a bit worried about that energy being released, and say, oh my God, what's happening? And for example, one group of volunteers came up with an idea that they should work on a buddy system to welcome newcomers, and that buddies would be volunteers, people from anywhere in the organization willing to welcome a newcomer and show him or her around, and where's the cafeteria, and what do you do for this or that. And we had one reaction from an HR person saying, oh, but who will choose the buddies? And they said, well, we won't choose, it's going to be just volunteers. I said, oh, but how are you going to make sure that they are the right people? And they said, well, what is the right people? You're a buddy, you're welcoming a newcomer. You don't need to be like a high potential or something like that. You're just a goodwill person. That's enough. And then the HR said, but how are you going to make sure that they say the right things? And again, we were on two different logics,
different planets. Yeah, absolutely.
Two different planets. One was about control and making sure that everything is well organized. That's the way organizations work, and that's great for a number of things, but not for everything. And the problem is that when you put everything in this basket, you create huge bottlenecks. Because the managers can't do everything. It's complete. That's where you get stuck. Paralysis by analysis and these kind of things.
Absolutely. So I mean, Celine, we started off the story with you kind of frustrated, plateaued, and now where are you sort of emotionally and sort of energetically at this point in the story, if you like?
I'm totally high. It's just amazing. I feel I've probably had the best job of everyone at Sanofi. It's emotionally fulfilling. It's just incredible. I feel my personal purpose is totally aligned with my job role and with the company's purpose. That's the sweet spot that Dan Pontefract describes in his book called the Purpose Effect. Yep. And I'm really there. I'm really in the purpose effect and in the sweet spot. And I totally love that. I'm amazed that it is showing results. It is. I'm not amazed. I'm happy that it does, but I'm surprised it does so much. The indicators are totally turning positive. They hadn't for 10 years. We hadn't made any significant improvements despite everything that was tried before. And here, it's just amazing. You should see the curves are like totally changed, and it's changing people's lives. People who were down in the organization, ignored, like totally buried under layers and layers of hierarchy, are now emerging as leaders and recognized because they are engaging, they're creative, they have ideas, they're doers, they make things happen. And it's not just a handful of people, it's the mindset. The mindset is changing. And some of our regulators who come and inspect our factories tell us that they do not recognize us. They say, what have you done? It's a 180-degree turn. It's just amazing.
Wonderful.
One of them told us, even in a meeting, it was like really, it gave me goosebumps. That person said to us, from an authority, said to us, "You are restoring my faith in the industry."
Extraordinary. Extraordinary.
Yeah, that's just amazing. Amazing.
I mean, it's an extraordinary story, and I mean, so the final question on this, and maybe it's a bit of an unfair question, but I mean, do you feel something different when you go back to headquarters? Because I mean, I think there's you've obviously, as you said, you've been referring to sites, manufacturing sites around the world. I mean, what is there a ripple effect going back into the mothership, or is it too early to say?
There is, and it's interesting to see how this thing is becoming viral as well, infectious, positively infectious. So some people are like curious and asking questions. Some functions who were not involved in the beginning are now knocking on the door and say, "Hey, can I join?" And we say, "Of course, it's for everyone. Anyone is welcome." So there's still resistance, and there will still be. But the results are here. The recognition, the external recognition is also here. We're also getting lots of awards for employee engagement, for whatever. So a lot of things a lot of good things are happening that's obviously serve the company at so many levels. So it's getting more and more difficult to ignore. But there's a difference between acknowledging the change and acknowledging that this is good and doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because doing it means for people to, for example, go on the internal social network. And that is something that some people do, and they try and they become used to it and they start to like it a lot. We use Yammer, and our group is extremely lively and growing extremely fast. But for some other people, it's still difficult. It's still a too much of a change in the culture and how they behave at work. It's really changing mindset from being someone with a title, a job, a role, mm-hmm. and someone coming as a whole person at work. We're not hiding behind a role or behind a job title or level. We're whole. Mm. We're coming with our emotions, our creativity, our experience, our history, and that's fantastic. And that's what we want to share, person to person, as a collective of individuals.
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, this idea of the work-life balance, always strike me as ludicrous because, what is it? You either work or you live. It feels to me that, that these are not two sides of a coin, But it sounds like that's what you're creating, I guess, is an opportunity for people to step into that and be completely themselves, which is uncomfortable for some, I suspect.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, Celine, this has been fantastic. So I've got 3 questions that I really wanted to cover before we wrap this up. So first question I asked I sent to you in advance. What have you changed your mind about recently?
That's a very interesting question. I thought about it, and I think the one thing that is probably interesting for you to hear is when I started my change efforts 7 years ago, I felt there was an enemy somewhere that I needed to fight. The leadership or the culture or the structure or something, the process and the more I get into changing things in depth, in the organization, the more I realize that there's no real enemy. In fact, there's no externality that I could affect, impact, and change and remove. And actually, there's a lot of good people actually everywhere. Yeah. And so it's a good thing and a bad, and it's a bit unsettling because in a way my enemy has disappeared. My enemy is like the structure or it's assumptions. It's people's assumptions in their heads. And this is really, really hard. When I read an article recently that really struck me because it referred to it resonated with that idea. It's structures, organization structure don't have a culture. They are a culture. You see?
Yeah.
And so how do you... So if culture is something that an organization has, then you can just dump it and get a new one. But if it's something that an organization is, then changing it means deep surgery or therapy for the whole organization. I took that from a post from what's his name, Rick, Flipchart Rick, in a post dated in 2013. But that's really, really interesting. So I think the job is really... It's never finished. It won't be finished anytime soon. There's still a whole lot of opportunities for change makers to affect those hidden assumptions and show people that, yes, it's okay to do differently and it won't put the system down or it will actually help. Yeah. There's still a lot of work, but it's great. It's a fantastic journey.
But as you say, there's a different energy from, us against the rest of the world versus us, together with the rest of the world. It changes the energy. Yeah.
Exactly.
So next question. You referred to yourself as a change maker. what do you do to remain creative and innovative, Celine?
So I read a lot, not necessarily, not enough, not as much as I would like, but I read a lot of books. I am lucky to know a lot of people who write books, and I got to meet them through Twitter and Facebook. And Twitter remains an amazing source of ideas and contacts and opportunities. So I really cherish this media. I don't want it to disappear, because this is bringing me to I just have 5 minutes and I go to see what happens, and then it brings me to it's serendipity. I love this serendipity that this media brings. So making new connections and reading stuff from other fields, and that is fantastic. So remaining open to new stuff, I think. Yeah, making space for that.
Oh, it's interesting. I mean, we had a previous guest who said, his tagline is "Never leave serendipity to chance," and it's lovely, because it is, you can structure it in a way, and it sounds like you do, by just exposing yourself to what goes on in Twitter, and it's all sorts of stuff pops up that you can't expect in advance.
Yes, absolutely.
And then the final question, to what do you attribute your success in life? Are there any specific skills or habits or mindsets that you feel you've mastered on your journey that have really had a significant impact and moved the needle?
So I've thought about that. I don't know. I think I'm a doer. So I like to do things. So, and not just stay at the level of ideas. I'm a practitioner. I've actually built ideas based on my practice and not the other way around. And I think for me, it served well, because I had to go through mastering tools and doing things on my own and understanding how this or that works, and staying late at night to understand whatever platform. So it's a really it was an artisan work, I would say. It didn't start from high, stratospheric level. It really started deep in the trenches. And so making things, being a maker, is probably a fantastic way of acquiring skills, especially if you're a maker with other people. So being a collective maker brings you a lot of new knowledge and energy and the diversity of viewpoints and trying to build things together. And that, I think, is a critical skill for the 21st century.
A collective maker, which is basically co-creating something together.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm sure that maybe this is what this is one of the. Your implementation plan, I suspect, flowed far more effectively as a result of having co-created and got the passion and everyone lined up. It was almost it's a wonderful way of doing it. But you have to invest far more up front, of course. Yes,
of course, and you have to. Put your ego aside, and you have to really replace I by we. And I think it's a very healthy thing to do. It's a very healthy exercise. It didn't prevent me, obviously, from having my blog and sharing my ideas and doing conferences. And when I'm on a stage, I'm alone, right? But I'm speaking in the name of a collective. And actually, when I say I'm alone, it's not true, because I recently brought one of our operators on stage with me, because I wanted people in the room to see what a real worker was. I think a lot of people, like in HR function or comms or whatever, think and speak about the future of work, but they don't often see real workers on the line so often. And it's really important to hear them and not just hear, but build things with them.
Yeah, it's a great story, and it's a rare story in the industry, I suspect, and that's what makes it so compelling, over and above the results that you're generating.
Yeah, it's rare, especially in the pharma industry. But if it works in pharma, it works for us. That means it can work everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's go for it.
So Celine, where can people get in touch with you?
So I have a blog. It's named weneedsocial.com. I need to write a bit more often, but when I write, it's really it's a lot of work, and it's really painful for me. English is not my native language, and writing in English is requires a little bit of effort, and I have so much to do because I'm in the work. I'm changing the real work with 4,000 activists now in the workplace, so it's taking me a lot of time. But I love my blog because it's my digital home. Yep. I have also a Twitter handle, Céline Schillinger.
Okay, we'll put all these. We'll put this in the show notes. Yeah, and then are you on LinkedIn as well?
I am. Okay. I'm on Facebook. I'm a little bit everywhere.
We'll put all that down. I'm glad to hear it, because it would have been for you not to have a social media platform would have sounded a bit odd.
Yes, of course.
It's been a great pleasure having you on the show, Celine. I'm sure our audience have enjoyed it as much as I did. I'm sure many of them will be in touch to learn more about what you did, because it is a remarkable story of change in a mature, long product life cycle, heavily regulated industry, and particularly in the quality area. So, best of luck with everything. And good luck with the 40 over 40. And thanks very much for coming on the show.
Thank you very much, Mark, for the opportunity. And I welcome all new connections. That's great. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Hi, this is Mark again. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with Celine as much as I did. Quite an extraordinary story, I think you'll agree, particularly if you're familiar with pharmaceuticals, where the world of quality is hugely regulated. It's a fundamentally, as she said, it's almost like the police force of the industry, and what she managed to achieve and how she managed to achieve it is quite remarkable. Some things I took away from that, the way that she took responsibility for managing her career, it was at a plateau. She made the journey from troublemaker to businesswoman of the year. Secondly, the way in which she, unlocked the hidden value within the company via tapping into the diversity of perspectives, leveraging technology. A great story for those of you in large organizations wondering how to get your message out. And thirdly, the way that she influences. Clearly it's not about us versus them. It's very, very collaborative, very, very co-creative. And, much of her success, I've got no doubt about it, is due to her approach and her ability to bring people together around a subject which has clearly enormously profound implications way beyond the benefits for shareholders and employees. So plenty in there. I'm sure we'll be hearing a lot more from Celine in the future as she continues to have an impact in the world, not just in the pharmaceutical industry, but also in the exclusive group of 40 women over 40. Before we go, I'd like to invite you to, if you haven't already, to join the thousands of other business leaders to access our exclusive resources that are proven to transform your business to help make you and your organizations more innovative, more entrepreneurial. All the details are there, innovationecosystem.com, plus the show notes from this conversation with Celine, as well as multiple other resources, including the transcripts, including the videos, including plenty of additional shows which you might not have got round to listening to. I would urge you to have a look around. There's a lot in there, and we're building up a great body of knowledge, which I'm sure you will find of interest. Until next time, there's plenty of knowledge here. Knowledge, to transform it into power, requires you to take action. So Celine has given us some good insights into how she went about it. Look forward to hearing from you. Please leave any comments in the show notes at the bottom of the page. And until next week, have a great time.